Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's WiCyS webinar. My name is Morgan Garland. I'm the board liaison with WiCyS. And with me today, I have Sydney from Nebulock, who's one of our strategic partners. I'm going to go ahead. Hopefully you can all see my screen here and just give you a quick overview of the WiCyS organization for those of you who are not familiar with us. WiCyS is a 501c3 nonprofit with a mission to recruit, retain, and advance women in cybersecurity. We often go by our acronym WiCyS, as in We Sisters, because that is exactly what we are. We are a global cyber sisterhood. We have over 11,000 members, and we're over 107 countries, 68 professional affiliates, and 300 student chapters around the world. We offer a variety of different initiatives and skills development training programs for all career levels. We have our monthly newsletter that goes out, our speakers bureau, where you can request different speakers on certain topics, our virtual conference, our annual conference coming up in the Washington, D.C. area. That's March 11th to the 13th. We have our annual career fair, Job Board Plus, which is available 24/7 for our strategic partners to post job openings to our WiCyS members. And you can view all of our open programs on our website, wicys.org, by navigating to the program page. A few that we currently have open for enrollment right now are the VDP program. We have the SANS Executive Cybersecurity Exercise and our book club, which is actually tomorrow, February 12th. And then we have our monthly Executive Leaders Network coming up too at the end of this month. You can find out about all of these programs on the website. And of course, we owe all of our wonderful initiatives to our strategic partners, our tier 1 partners being Akamai, Amazon, Bloomberg, Cisco, Ford, Google, Lockheed Martin, Palo Alto Networks, and SentinelOne. Just a reminder to ask questions today. You see a little chat box on your screen where you can drop your questions in at any point throughout the presentation. We will have time reserved at the end to answer your questions, so just know we will get to them at the end of the session. And if you haven't already done so, subscribe to the WiCyS newsletter to stay up to date on all of our upcoming events and initiatives. You can do that by visiting our website at wicys.org. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sydney, to go ahead and kick off our webinar today. Thank you so much, Sydney.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, let's jump back into the slides. So my name is Sydney Marrone. I am the head of threat hunting at a company called Nebulock. We do AI-driven threat hunting. And you're here today to talk about Threat Hunting 101, from alerts to adversaries. And this is a talk for really any level, whether you are in information security or you're trying to get into information security, or you're in threat hunting and trying to advance your career. This talk is for you. We're going to break it down. Now, about me, like I said, my name's Sydney. I spend my days threat hunting bad guys, but I also do a lot outside of my day job. So I'm the co-founder of Thor Collective, which runs a Substack, a podcast, as well as other fun InfoSec projects, which we're going to talk about a little bit today. You can check that out on thorcollective.com. I'm also the co-author of the Peak Threat Hunting Framework, which we are going to go in depth into. And then I'm also the author of the Agentic Threat Hunting Framework, which we will touch on just a little bit at the end as we talk about the future of threat hunting. The average attacker hides in a network for 11 days before being detected. Just let that number sink in. So this is from Mandiant's M-Trends report from last year. And surprisingly, it has gone down. It was 21 days a few years ago. And this is calendar days. So attackers are not taking the weekends off. They are doing the work on the weekends, just like our wonderful security operations teams, or SOCs, or incident response teams, or IR teams. And another fact, most breaches are found by outsiders. So bug bounties, vulnerability reports, researcher reports are telling companies before things like alerts. And alerts are catching only the known bad. But what about all the unknown unknowns? Who is looking for those? And what if instead of waiting for those alerts to fire, we go out there and we go look or hunt for those unknown unknowns? So think about that 11 days as we kind of get into this talk and talk about why threat hunting is important, because that 11 days is a long time for an adversary to be in your environment, looking around, doing malicious things. A little bit of a breakdown of what we are going to cover today. So we're going to talk about what threat hunting is and what it is not. We're going to talk about the Peak Threat Hunting Framework and really do a deep dive on it. And then we're going to go through a live example of a hunt using Peak. I'm going to show you that, yes, you can get started on this today and how you can do so. And then we're going to have a Q&A at the end where you can put questions in the chat and ask away. So what threat hunting is not? This is very important. So let's make sure we get this out of the way. It's not being reactive and waiting for alerts. You don't need an expensive tool like a SIM to do this. You can use tools like grep and go through a CSV. Really, you need to use whatever tools you have available to you. It's not just available for our rock stars, ninjas. Really, it's for anyone with some curiosity and some creativity. It's not random searching and hoping, going down rabbit holes. While it could be threat hunting to some, it's typically not very fruitful and not what we consider like true threat hunting. Also, this guy. They don't even have a face, so I don't think they could. I consider them not threat hunting either, too. So what is threat hunting? Truly, it is proactive in nature. So we are proactively seeking out threats in our environment. So that unknown, and we're not reacting and waiting for those threats to come in like your SOC or your incident response team. It's typically hypothesis driven. So we are thinking of what's happening in our environment. We have a theory, and we are trying to prove or disprove that theory. It's human-led. So I mentioned for creativity, curiosity, these are two behaviors that I often see in threat hunters. They're just very interested in learning more. And this can really help when you are doing your threat hunting and giving you ideas of what to threat hunt, what you think the attacker is doing. It's also iterative. So each hunt, you are gaining knowledge, and that knowledge is being applied to future hunts. And other people on your team can use that knowledge. So we will touch more on knowledge as the talk goes. Another thing about threat hunting is we are assuming compromise. We are looking for the unknown unknowns. We already think bad has happened in our environment, and we're going to prove it or disprove it out. Think of a threat hunter like a digital detective. And so we're going to stick with that analogy and kind of walk through for those who may be newer to information security or threat hunting and want to understand it. Crime scenes are very similar to your logs and your telemetry you have available to you. So these are your data sources. These are where you're going to go through and investigate. You're going to look at logs and try to prove or disprove whatever attacker behavior you're digging into. For suspects, these would be your threat actors or your TTPs, which are tactics, techniques, and procedures. So these are the bad guys, the labeled bad guys that have been documented by threat intelligence, and also the tactics, techniques, and procedures that might go along with that. Clues are things like behaviors that we know an attacker is doing. So an example would be like DNS tunneling. And for DNS tunneling, the behavior would be like what it looks like in the events. So that's something we want to note down, and it will help lead us to finding more clues and potentially finding that truly malicious activity. Case theory is going to relate to your hypothesis, as we talked about. You're proving or disproving that. And then your investigation is just your threat hunt. Let's talk about a framework that's very near and dear to me. Peak Threat Hunting Framework is something that myself and two former colleagues, David Bianco and Dr. Ryan Fetterman, created and released about 2 years ago at Splunk. So it's entirely open source, vendor agnostic. It's really a methodology that you can use to do your threat hunting. And PEAK stands for different phases. There are essentially 3 phases, and then we have one that is tied to the rest. So we have prepare, execute, act, and then knowledge. So knowledge is actually a part of each of these phases. And we're going to dive into each phase a little more deeply and give examples too. But we built this because hunting was a little chaotic and it wasn't modernized for the more advanced approaches that have been hunters have been doing for the past few years. So it covers 3 different approaches to threat hunting. It covers hypothesis driven, covers baseline or exploratory. So say you have a new data source and you know nothing about it. This is where a baseline can be really helpful. And then it also covers model-assisted threat hunting, or MATH. Now, this is a much more advanced approach, but it is using machine learning and applying that to your data to threat hunt. It's a very cool approach. Peak gives you that structured framework that you need, so you're not going down rabbit holes, and you have a very repeatable process so you can show value for your organization. I'm biased, but I highly recommend using Peak or some sort of similar framework out there for your threat hunting. There's a lot of great ones. There's Squirrel, there's Tahiti, and many more. So let's dive into Peak and talk through each of the phases and what they really mean and what you're doing at each phase. So the first phase is going to be prepare. And this is when you are planning your hunt out. So you are learning what's normal and not normal in your environment. This should be something you have as knowledge, and you're learning what data sources you have in relation to whatever topic you're threat hunting. So you're picking your topic. You're also determining the hypothesis in relation to that. So we'll go back to the DNS tunneling example. The hypothesis could be adversaries are using DNS tunneling to exfiltrate data in our Windows environment. So we think that's happening. We need to go prove it out. But before we do that, we need to continue with the planning. We're doing scoping, which is incredibly important. You don't want to be running a hunt for 6 months or a year. You want to scope it down appropriately for your environment and whatever your hypothesis is. Another big thing that you need to do is define what success means. And my thoughts on having a successful threat hunt is confirming or denying your theory or your hypothesis. Like, that's really all it is, because a lot of times you may not find bad, but you may find other things, and you'll gain knowledge all along the way. So we'll talk more to that and what that means. Hypothesis sources. So where do you get your ideas from? Ideally, you are threat intelligence driven. You can use ideas from recent threat reports, recent breaches, vulnerability reports. There are a ton of different options out there, and lots of reputable companies will be pushing these out. There's a lot of open source out there as well, so you shouldn't have to always pay for your threat intel. MITRE ATT&CK is a repository of attacker tactics, techniques, and procedures. It's baked into pretty much every security tool out there. So if you're trying to be in information security or threat hunting, it is a very useful tool to know and understand. But that could be a good starting point for a threat hunt. It could be something that you find interesting and you're curious about and you want to dig into more. Next, we have execute. So this is the fun part and what you think of when you think of threat hunting. This will be where you are looking through your data sources and trying to prove or disprove that theory by examining logs. So you're determining exactly what that behavior that you're hunting is supposed to look like in your logs, and you're going to try to find it. A big thing with threat hunting is we're focusing on behaviors versus IOCs. And IOCs are indicators of compromise. So think of IOCs as more your domains, your hashes, your IPs. These are things on the bottom half of the pyramid of pain, which is another great tool. And the top half of the pyramid of pain goes more into behaviors. And these are things we really want to focus on as we are hunting because they are harder for the adversaries to change. Now, when you're executing, you're doing a lot of iterating. You're trying to find a very high fidelity query to dig into your events and find that specific behavior. And we're documenting everything. Threat hunting is a lot of documentation. Even if you're not finding anything bad, you still want to make sure that you are notating anything and everything because you never know if it will be useful to you later or it could be useful even to someone down the line. No fancy tools are required to threat hunt. As I mentioned before, you could use a SIM like Splunk or Elastic, but you can use databases like tables in a database. You could also just use a CSV and grep right through it. There are so many different options and ways. You really need to use what tools are available to you. Next, we have ACT. So this is where we are taking everything that we found and uncovered during our threat hunt, and we are acting upon it. So we are opening tickets with appropriate stakeholders. Say we have a data gap that we found, or a process gap even. We want to make sure we are sharing that out with the people who can actually take action on that. We might have new detection ideas. We might have new hunt ideas. And lastly, we might find evil. If we find evil, meaning malicious activity, then we need to escalate that as soon as possible. However your company does that, whether it's your SOC or your incident response team, but that's something that needs to be triaged and looked at immediately. If you found nothing, it is still valuable. You learned about your environment and you were able to share that out with people. Part of hunting is becoming a mini subject matter expert, or SME, in whatever topic it is you are hunting. So for the DNS tunneling, you might ask yourself at the beginning, how can I hunt this? I don't know anything about it. Well, that's part of the process. Is during the prepare phase, you're going to be doing research and trying to understand exactly what DNS tunneling is and what it looks like. And once we get to the end, you can share that out with other teammates or other stakeholders at your company that may benefit from it. ACT, we could be creating hunt reports, knowledge-based articles, doing readouts, writing Slack or team messages, and really just sharing everything we can. I truly believe threat hunting should be transparent, and we should be sharing to really show what value we are doing. Even if we found nothing at the end, every little bit's going to improve our security posture. Now, the last part of peak is going to be knowledge. So this is where we are documenting everything from the entire first 3 phases, and we are sharing that out. Like I mentioned before, the sharing, we want to make sure that we are showing our impact to the organization and giving feedback to other teams. Maybe we find a process gap in a playbook that another team has. That's something we can identify and share, and that's an improvement right there. Peak should always be considered a loop. So we should be learning and improving on our hunts every single time, and they should be feeding into each other. They all make each hunt better. Let's walk through a live example, and this is going to follow Peak closely. The hypothesis is attackers may be abusing certutil.exe to download malicious payloads because it's a legitimate Windows tool that often bypasses defenses. You may not know what certutil is, and that's okay. Like I mentioned before, you would become a mini SME in the certutil application and learn exactly what it does and how adversaries abuse it. For the sake of this presentation, though, certutil is a built-in tool with Windows. So it's considered a living off the land binary or a LOL bin, which means an attacker can just use what's already installed on the operating system instead of bringing their own tool in. Now, certutil can be used to download files. So it's meant for administrative use, but adversaries can use it too. And they sure do like using it. Because it's meant for legitimate usage, it often flies under the radar, meaning that it is harder to detect because it is used by admins and developers and other people at your company. So we have to be very creative in what we dig into. The query. So we have our hypothesis. Now we need some sort of query to actually dig into it. And so this is a pseudo query that I've created that's looking at the certutil executable name. And then it's also looking at some command line parameters. So these would be parameters that would indicate that this is a download from a URL. We see HTTP, we see URL. These could be indicators and what we would want to dig into. Lastly, we have our results. So we found something. And hypothetically, we found something. We found a suspicious download from an external IP. So we escalate it. And we share that with our SOC team. And they are going to go ahead and triage and respond to it further. Now, if we didn't find anything, that's still great. We can document the hunt in our library. If we found something or didn't find something, we could create a detection rule, sharing with anyone and everyone who is a stakeholder and would benefit from this information is going to be really important. Also thinking of what next. So a lot of times when you're threat hunting, you come across an idea or activity that may inspire you for another threat hunt. So we want to make sure we are also noting those down so that we have future ideas. So like the example here, what about other living off the land binaries? There are quite a bit of them. So something to dig into if you are curious and want to know what that encompasses. All right, so I know there's questions in a chat. One thing after going through all this and learning about hypotheses and the process, I want you to think to yourself, anyone who's watching, what technique, breach, threat actor, something you've heard about in the news, what would you hunt for if you had the opportunity? Feel free to put it in the chat if you want to, or even just think about it. This is how we start building our hypothesis. So how do you get started? First, we need to learn the basics. And I include MITRE ATT&CK here, which I mentioned before, is that repo of TTPs. It's all available online and such a good knowledge base of information about what attackers are actually doing. And it's constantly growing and it covers many domains. So it covers things like cloud, Windows, Mac OS, like there are tons of different versions of it. The Peak framework, as mentioned, is open source, and it's a methodology that's available to you right now. So please feel free to go check it out. Look at the other approaches to threat hunting. If you are someone who's been threat hunting for a little bit and you need some more ideas, this can be a really great resource. Curiosity. So this is a very important behavior for a threat hunter, and wanting to dig further into things. Like, let your creativity and your curiosity fly and use it to your advantage when you're threat hunting. My favorite part of threat hunting is just learning something new every day. And this is where those things come into play. Practicing at home can be really helpful. Home labs like Splunk and Elastic are both free, and you can download on your personal computer and set up a lab environment and learn these tools. CTFs, or capture the flags, are also a really great way to learn about cybersecurity in general. Some of them are even more blue team focused. I like to recommend these because a lot of people are intimidated by them and think, oh, I'm not skilled enough to do a CTF. And I am terrible at CTFs. I have done many, and I always learn something no matter what. So I would highly recommend, even if you feel like it's incredibly challenging or you are not quite there yet, you will learn something if you try. Hands-on. Places like HackMe, try HackMe, is a wonderful resource for a wonderful free resource for hands-on learning. And then also Bots, which is a Splunk option. So Splunk creates their hands-on labs, which using their tools. So you get true experience using the tools, and they have scenarios you can go through, both free and available to you now. And then also just keep connecting with people. You are all here, so kudos to you. You have gotten that start. Threat hunting communities, there's so many Slacks and Discords out there. Ask around. You will find a handful, I'm sure. Lastly, just follow other threat hunters and InfoSec professionals on social media, whether that's X or LinkedIn or Blue Sky, wherever you use. Use that to your advantage. Again, the free resources I mentioned, I think this is really important, especially if we're trying to switch careers or we're early in our career. Having open source free tools is incredibly valuable. So we have Peak and MITRE as those first two. Hearth is something that myself and the rest of Thor Collective have released. It's an open source hypothesis repo on GitHub. You can check it out at hearth.thorcollective.com. And we built this so people can get threat hunting ideas. So every idea in the repo has a hypothesis, it has resources, it has information about why you should hunt this. It is not a query library. There are so many of those. We wanted something a little bit different. So something that just gives you ideas for threat hunts. The Agentic Threat Hunting Framework, which I have not gotten to yet, but we will talk about briefly, is another resource that leans more towards the future of threat hunting. And then last is just practice data. I already mentioned these, Bots and Try HackMe, like great free resources. I want to talk really briefly about career paths and what options you have in security, or some of the options. There are many more than these. This does not list them all. These are some of the more operational type roles. And if you're watching this and you're learning about threat hunting, you're really interested, or maybe you're interested in just a part of it, there are very many adjacent roles. So like threat intelligence which would be a lot more on the research side and looking at threat intelligence reports, determining what makes sense to use for your company. So what threats are affecting your company? You really need to hone in on that and know that very well. Detection engineer, this is where you're query building and putting those reactive alerts into place to protect your environment. Not only protect, but also just detect in your environment. This is a little more engineer heavy, but also a really similar role to threat hunting. And then we have our SOC analysts, which most people are familiar with. These are the people responding to alerts. And then we have our red team, which is the opposite of a lot of these. And this is the team that is actually attacking the internal environment. So think of them like the white hats of the group, where they are on the good side and trying to attack to better the company. The future of threat hunting. This is something that I have been working on the past few months, and I think is really important. I realized last year, as the age of AI was coming, that threat hunting was going to change completely a year from now. And it has. I have two problems with your manual threat hunting, which we talked about. The first one is memory. So I typically don't remember what I hunted a year ago, let alone what my colleague hunted 3 months ago. I can run string searches through whatever tools we have, say Jira or Slack or Google Docs, but that only gets me so far. The second problem is that many teams are trying to introduce AI into their workflows and struggling. There's so many concepts out there with AI, and I'm still learning all of them and learning by the week as new things come out. So trying to figure out, how do we fit it into our current workflows? That's where agentic threat hunting comes into play. And so I created the Agentic Threat Hunting Framework and released that in December of last year. So it is another open source vendor agnostic tool. It's methodology, but you can check it out at agenticthreathunting.com. It'll lead to a blog post about it, which in turn leads to a GitHub repo where everything is stored. Some of the keys behind this framework specifically are a pattern called the lock pattern, which is for humans and AI to follow. It's very similar to Peak, but it's for humans and AI to follow, to be on the same page and just have some sort of repetition and structure to like their documentation. It has 5 levels of maturity for agentic hunting. So if you're watching this and you're threat hunting, you're thinking to yourself, I am nowhere near ready. You're probably at level 0 or even level 1. And I have path, so you can slowly add on to get more agentic, like a little bit at a time. Like the first step is documenting everything in a Git repo. And then the next step is using AI against that threat, Git repo. And it builds from there, adding agents and MCP servers and all the good AI things. It's meant to augment our threat hunting work and not replaced by them. It's also meant to support frameworks like Peak. So it's not meant to replace Peak. It's meant to work side by side and build upon the awesome work that we've done with Peak. To recap everything that we've been through today, as we are at the end, threat hunting is proactive, hypothesis-driven work. Peak Threat Hunting Framework is a structured cycle that you can use to do your threat hunting. It has 3 phases, with knowledge being used throughout all. You don't need fancy tools. We've harped on this. And you should be learning something through every hunt. Take that knowledge with you, document it, continue to iterate on it, and just make it better. Lastly, you can do this. Anyone can do this. Keep that curiosity and creativity and really go run with it and go from there. All right, thank you. I think it's time for questions and answers. All right, let's see. How do you not get discouraged with AI and threat hunting? I am probably the opposite. I am very encouraged, to be quite honest, about the capability of adding AI onto our threat hunting. I still think threat hunting will need some manual aspect. At the end of the day, we are not quite there yet. We're probably getting close. And I just think we need to leverage it and lean in because it's not going anywhere, and use it to augment our work. Do you need a business Splunk account for bots? You do not. You can use just your normal account and sign up. So do I need any special certifications to become a threat hunter? Great question. I get asked about certifications all the time. I don't think you need special certifications, but they help you get in the front door, like get past the recruiter. Things like the Sec Plus and I would recommend the Sec Plus, other cloud certificates that you can get. I think cloud has been around for a bit, but we are pushing more and more towards it. So if you can show that you're knowledgeable in one of the cloud platforms, I don't really care which one, that can be helpful because they can just translate to each other. If you know AWS, you understand the concepts, you just don't know the exact names that they might be in Azure. Difference between threat hunting and OSINT. So OSINT stands for open source intelligence. So open source intelligence would be something you would use to threat hunt. It is what is available out on the internet, free of charge. And typically a lot of vendors will post these, or just researchers in the community will post about it. And you can use this to threat hunt. Always check your sources. We want to make sure that it's at least a little reputable, but I would say OSINT feeds into threat hunting. When you're threat hunting in our encounter with many subject matters, how do you prevent burnout from acting as a SME? Another wonderful question. I would say I would continue to document like everything I know as a SME. I'm not going to remember everything, but document and reference those things. So at least as you're feeling that burnout, you're feeling maybe too much going on in your head, that you have something to refer to. So keep that knowledge somewhere. If it's not with you, then make sure you're documenting it to use for future. How are red teamers different from threat hunters? I feel the mindset is similar, isn't it? It is. I would say it is very similar. Your threat hunters are typically on your blue team side, so your defensive side. So they're protecting the organization by creating alerts, responding to alerts, being proactive, like threat hunting. Red team is on the offensive side. So while they are trying to protect the company, they're doing it differently. They are typically attacking the company in some fashion. So they are taking a TTP like you would with threat hunting, but using it against the organization so creating that malicious activity in the organization. That can be a really good thing to do when you're threat hunting. So part of growth in threat hunting can be adding emulation. And that's where red teaming can come into play. So either the threat hunters doing it themselves or working with the red team to incorporate that into their threat hunts. Do you have a sample reference template for a TH report? I do. It's on the Thor Collective blog or Substack. So if you go to thorcollective.com, it is located in there. Just put in template, search template, and you should be able to find that. It's free. It's also on a GitHub somewhere. So it is out there. I was told by my manager and the manager of cybersecurity in my workplace that I shouldn't become a SOC analyst because it is boring. However, everything about it seems fun. What are your thoughts on SOC analyst role if you have any? Thank you. SOC analysts are such necessary roles. They are our front line of defenses. I think they're incredibly important. And I know in the age of AI, people think they're going away. I look at it as they will be able to do more advanced things. Like a good SOC is going to automate and use AI for a lot of their level 1 work and then make their SOC analysts better. So I would aim for roles that do that for you and help you grow. It's a great starting point for a lot of people, and most people in cybersecurity is working in a SOC. I disagree with it's boring. I think it can be interesting if you make it interesting. I think alerts can be a lot and a little overwhelming and maybe a little bit of burnout, but it should inspire you to grow and maybe pivot to another career like threat hunting or threat intelligence. If you went back to level 0, what would be your first steps? Is there any knowledge you would say helps as a foundation? If I went back to the beginning of my career, I would say I would network more and not be afraid to network with people. I think because in the beginning of our career, we have a terrible imposter syndrome. We don't want to ask any questions or bother anybody, but I think that is incredibly important because you're only going to learn one way. Another recommendation I would have is to get mentors. I didn't have any mentors at the very, very beginning of my journey. And so I was trying to figure a lot of things out on my own, which worked out, and you can do it. It might take a little bit longer, but it's always great to get advice from people who have been in the field for many years, and they can give you new ideas and just give you feedback on everything you're doing. Can you elaborate more on behavior in the context of unknown unknowns, specifically when you already have known attacks set as alerts? Bots has a limited number of challenges and data sets related to bots, V3. So the idea of unknown unknowns are behaviors that maybe no one has even uncovered yet, or you don't know are in your environment. So these could be things like 0 days or just new behaviors that you come across when you are threat hunting. How long did it take you to get comfortable with queries? I'm still not comfortable with queries. I think there are so many different query languages as well. I worked at Splunk for 5 years, so I probably am more comfortable with that, and it just takes practice. I'd say over the years, you just get better and better at it. I think with the introduction of AI to a lot of workflows that is going to change. You won't need to be as knowledgeable, and you'll be able to leverage some of those tools to help get you at least part of the way there. Maybe not write the perfect query, but help give you ideas and learn about different commands that maybe you didn't know about. I think that's where people look down upon AI for those things, and I see it more as like, oh, I can learn from that and get better at what I'm already doing. CTFs are intimidating. Any suggestions for getting hands-on experience to achieve confidence? Places like TryHackMe and Bots. Bots is somewhat of a CTF for the blue team. These are both really good resources. I know I already talked about them, but they have a lot of blue team options. And I would use those because they're open source too, and dig around and see what you can learn before you maybe join a CTF. But do you have any book recommendations? On the top of my head, I wrote a book last year with my former colleague, Dr. Ryan Fetterman, called The Threat Hunter's Cookbook. It's a free resource. And it's out on, if you just search the Threat Hunter's Cookbook, it's out. You can get the PDF on Splunk's website. I would recommend that if you're interested more in peek and how you can actually use it. Another great resource is Huntpedia. It's another free tool. It's something that Squirrel put out many years ago, but it still resonates. I would check that out. Huntpedia is what it's called. How did you get interested in threat hunting? Did you study it? Who inspired you to be in this field, if any? I was interested in threat hunting when I was at a company maybe 6 or 7 years ago. I was on the incident response team, and 2 of my colleagues and I were very interested in threat hunting. So we convinced our manager to let us prove out that it was worthwhile. And we did just that. And so we started a team, the 3 of us, and built it from scratch. And I was intrigued from there. I love the thought of learning all about new techniques and just seeing what else is out there. I feel like with incident response, a lot of times you investigate and you close a ticket and then it's done. And sometimes I was like, I want to know more. I want to dig further into the what's going on. I want to see if we see this anywhere else in the environment. And so that's why threat hunting really interested me. I have almost 3 years experience working as a SOC analyst. What is your recommendation on how I can transition into a threat hunt and detection engineering role? If you are already at a company that is doing those things, I would suggest reaching out to that team and seeing if you can shadow or even rotate through those areas. If not, I would use resources, as many resources as you can online. Like I mentioned, those books, I think those books could be a great start. Using something like Bots, which has free data available, and you can use a tool like Splunk to dig into the data. It can give you an example of what it could be like to do something like threat hunting. And you can build alerts in there too, so you can see what it's like to do detection engineering. So I would do that. I would also network with people in those fields in the industry, like reach out to people, comment on people's posts on LinkedIn, just do anything and everything you can just to network and maybe even find a mentor in those areas so they can help guide you. Will you go over again how to use GitHub in a capacity of practicing threat hunting? So as far as threat hunting, and this accounts for if you're really documenting for any team, but I think using a Git repository can be really beneficial for threat hunting. I talk about it a lot in the Agentic Threat Hunting Framework because you can take action upon it very easily. Like you can use command line to run questions against it. You can run commands against it. You can use AI, whatever AI is available at your organization, and use that to query the repo. And it helps with the memory problem. So we can ask, did I hunt this before? And it can look through your repo and know if you hunted this or something very similar to it before, versus say doing that string search in whatever tool you have. What will be a good starting point for someone who has just taken a decision to pursue a cybersecurity career? Is there any age limit? No. There is no age limit. I work with people of all ages. We need diversity. So keep pushing forward no matter what age or what you are. Anyone can do it. How do you get mentors? I would suggest going to local events. Most places have local InfoSec communities. WiCyS has tons of local communities. I would go to those and start talking to people and see who you vibe with, who inspires you, and then go from there. Because sometimes you might not vibe with a mentor, it might not be a right fit, and you might need to find someone else. That is perfectly fine. So there's nothing wrong with asking. Some people might be too busy and they will tell you that, but there's nothing wrong with just connecting with people and asking. As a threat hunter analyst, how much experience and or knowledge should you have in understanding networking, infrastructure, system administrative functions? Do you rely on subject matter experts within your team to refer to if questions arise regarding an alert, or are you expected to know this information as an analyst? So two pieces of this question. You should have some of this underlying knowledge if you are threat hunting. Threat hunting is not the easiest field to be entry level. SOC analyst is probably a little bit more of a good gateway into doing threat hunting. And I only say that because you need to know bad from good, as far as malicious activity, and understanding the fundamentals, like how an operating system works, whether this executable on an operating system is suspicious or not, can really, really benefit you. And I would say as a SOC analyst, you're not expected to know everything. I don't know everything. I'm not saying I know all those things, but I know some of them, or I can retrieve the information really easily. But you shouldn't be expected to know everything. You are always learning in every role you're in, whether you're junior or senior. I think there is always opportunities. I'm almost finished with getting my associates in cybersecurity. Can you threat hunt fresh out of college, or is it too high of a level to start out at? I'm a mother of 8 and I'm good at detective work. I love this. Well, congrats. And I think it's possible. It's just going to be a little bit harder. I kind of just talked about the entry level thing. Threat hunting is hard due to entry level. I think it's getting a little bit easier with the introduction of AI and tools that we can use, but it is still a challenge. So I encourage you to find SOC positions or other more junior security positions. I know entry level is really hard right now finding jobs, but just keep trying and network. If you're struggling finding a job, just continue to network, go to local meetups, go to any conferences you can go to, and try to interact with people. That's could be how you get your next job. How do we incorporate threat intelligence into deciding what to hunt for? I would say you need to prioritize and figure out what's important to your organization. Previous orgs, we've had prioritization matrices, which we listed behaviors that were more significant than others, and we would use scoring. Like an example of a behavior would be is this related to an incident response event? So say incident happened and they sent over a hunt idea, then that would put the priority higher. So that's just an example, but I would say you really need to figure out what's important to your company. If something is known to target your industry, that's probably going to be more important than something that's targeted towards a totally different industry. Is bots spelled that way, or bots with the Z? It's BOTS. So it stands for boss of the SOC. Are there transferable skills a person can apply to SOC and threat hunting roles? So I'm going to guess you're asking between the roles, but yes, there's a ton of overlap. They transfer very easily. I've seen a lot of wonderful SOC analysts become threat hunters, and they usually do very well just based on their knowledge from responding to alerts and then their experience doing investigations. What are the courses I need to learn for cybersecurity online? This could be a lot. There could be a lot. I would suggest, there's a lot of free resources out there. I mentioned them already. And there's probably some other resources. I would check out those books I mentioned. Those can be great as starters to dig into, and then kind of go from there. So like the books and the free resources I mentioned, I would say start with those. You don't necessarily need a course. You just need some tools to get you started. Like TryHackMe has a bunch of courses. I've had lots of cloud projects related to security team and doing auditing and alert automation. I've experience with vulnerability management with Nessus and Sec Plus and identity and access management, but I do not know where I am in the security roles in the job market to apply. I have a CCSP too. That's a lot. That's impressive. I would ask yourself, what are you interested in? And where can you take your skills you have and apply them? Like that's my advice. Yes, okay, I see you're responding to the previous question. And entry to cybersecurity roles, having an admin executive. Okay, so transferring the skills between admin executive management background and cybersecurity, those go really well. When you're applying for jobs, if you shouldn't meet all the criteria. You should meet some of them, and you have to make it work for you. So if you don't have the technical skills, at least experience-wise, you haven't had a job in cybersecurity, but you have had a lot of other jobs, leverage what can make you stand out. So if you have a lot of soft skills, management, leadership, like those could make you stand out and be a great teammate. And then use tools like TryHackMe or bots to level up, at least on the technical skills side. I think that's all the questions. And we are just about at time. So thank you to everyone.